Hi, this is Steve Bonacontri from SOA Consulting Services, continuing our Angular 4 tutorial on dependency injection. So we're going to discuss 3 dependency injection examples in this tutorial. One of them is a simple form of injection using a user service and a user object. The other one is one that looks at module versus component providers. We also discuss how to use abstract classes and interfaces when defining services that are providers. And then the last example, we'll look at a use factory provider. So let's continue. Okay, so let's go to, I have all my samples up in my WebStorm development environment. And now what I want to do is, let me go to the command line and go into my project. And what I'm going to do is let me start the project while we begin discussing it. Okay, so let's look at the example. Okay, first of all, we have an Angular CLI JSON file. It has an index.html and a main driver. Let's look at the main driver. Okay, it's your typical main.ts file, which gets generated by Angular CLI within WebStorm. It bootstraps an app module. An app module is in the app directory. So let's take a look at our app module. Okay, so it looks like we have we are importing the browser module, the ng module, an app component, a user component, and a user service. Now, our declarations include app component and user component, and our imports include the browser module, and our provider includes something called user service, which is imported up here. Now, what this does is it tells the app module that if components in my app module want to use this user service, they could inject it into their constructor whenever they need it. Or they could override it with their own providers and use a different class for their user service. Okay, and once again, we bootstrap the app component. Okay, so let's take a look at the app component. The app component has an app component HTML template URL, and a styles URL, and selector is app root, which is what we saw in the index.html file. So let's look at that template real quick. This template says dependency injection simple example, and it has a DI user tag. So the child component of this app component is associated with that template. So we have another user component here, which is the child of the app component. Let's take a look at how that's defined. That has a user component template, a style sheet. It has a provider called user service, and the user component has an attribute user, which is of type user, and the constructor says inject the user service into the constructor, storing the reference into the user service variable. And then I could invoke a function, get info on that service, and the user attribute user in my user component will have that info stored in it. Okay, so let's look at the user component template. I have a template here that says user information, employee number, name, phone, company, and address. So where are these user attributes coming from? So let's go back to this particular component, the user component. It's importing user service and user from a services directory, user.service. That's here. And here's my users.service.ts file. First, we define a user object where the constructor has an employee number, name, phone, company, and address in it. Now remember this notation, a constructor public as an argument will by default, TypeScript will create an implicit employee number attribute which is publicly accessible from the user object. Okay, now the class itself has a method called getInfo, and it returns a user object. And the getInfo function will instantiate a user with an employee number, name, phone number, company name, address. So once again, the template of the user component will render all that information. Now the selector here is DI user. In the app component template, I'm using the DI user. Excuse me. So let's go take a look to see what's going on with our application that's running. Let's go to Google. We're going to navigate to port 4200. And this is what we see. We have an HTML page with a body color. Let me just show you the hierarchy of my style sheets. I have a background color for the body of my web page. I have an app component style sheet where I'm using turquoise for the application, the Angular 4 application. I have a user component background color. So that's where these colors are coming from. I have the page color. This square box here is the root application. I have an H1 color probably, and here the green is the the user component, and I'm coloring the H1 tag one color, and everything else is not really colored. It just has the background green. Okay, so that's simple enough. Let's take a look at a different example. Let me go into DI. I'm going to start that. Now this is the DI example. We're going to show several different things here. Okay, so we have an index.html and a main driver. Main driver is sort of the same. Let me reformat my code. It bootstraps my app module. My app module has some interesting things here. So it has an app component, it has a mobile service, and it has two different components. A mobile 1 component and a mobile 2 component. What we're going to show you here is how a provider in the app module can be injected into mobile 1 component and mobile 2 component. Or mobile 2 component can override that service with a different service definition. So typically what happens is you use the token name, which is here, consistently, and you could point to different implementations if you want to. One scenario, like we said, was point to a mock service in development, point to a real service in production, whatever. Let's see what we're doing in this application. Okay, so the first thing we do is we know we're bootstrapping app component, so we look to see what app component is doing. Okay, it's simple. It's got an app root, which is in the index file. And there's a template and a style sheet. So let's see what's in the template. So here I have two child component templates. One is mobile 1 and the other is mobile 2. Okay, so let's look and see. Now if they're both using mobile service token, and that provider is only defined in the app module, it's going to be the same service they're using. So let's look at mobile 1. Mobile 1 component has the selector mobile 1, has a style sheet, and it has a template. And we actually use the mobile service injected. We use the mobile service provider from the app module. This is the mobile service, and I get device information and I put it in my attribute device. Now let's look at mobile service 2, or mobile 2 component rather. Oh, this is interesting. This particular component is defining its own provider. It's saying use mobile service token name, but I want to use this implementation of my service. So, and of course, that service gets injected into the constructor, and we invoke the get device from that service, and we put that value in our device in our mobile 2 component. But we still don't know the difference between these services, the one defined at the app module level and the one defined at this component level. And let me just quickly see what these templates are doing. Nothing really. One says mobile 1 component has mobile device title. We use interpolation here to dynamically render the device.title. So that is this device dot title. That device object as well as the mobile service class is defined in my mobile.service file. And then mobile2 component.html does the same thing. So basically what we're trying to do here is we're trying to say component 1 appears to be using a provider at the app module level. Component 2 seems to be using a provider at the component level. One is using class mock mobile service. The other one is not using the use class, so it must be instantiating a mobile service class. So now let's look at the services and see what's in the services file. So the only thing that's being used here at the moment is the mobile.service file. So let's take a look at that. Okay, I have an exporter class device with a title, which is type string. The public keyword says TypeScript is going to implicitly create a title attribute of this device class and make it public. There's a mobile service where I get device and return a type of device, and I return a new object with an iPhone title. There's also a mock mobile service which implements that class, and the getDevice function of that mock mobile service returns an object of type device, and we instantiate that device using iPad Pro as the argument. So what should happen here? This guy is gonna use the mobile service, and this one is gonna use the mock service. Let's see if I got that right. Yes. Okay, so, and then like I said, we should see iPhone and iPad Pro. So let's see what happened here. Okay, the application got rendered. We see in the gray area is the Angular 4 application. And we have two children I'm going to call component templates, where one says mobile 1 component has mobile device iPhone, and the other one says mobile 2 component has mobile device iPad Pro. Okay, so let's now take a look at a couple of other things. Okay, let's go look at the app module, and let's change the provider in the module to use the mock mobile service. So what this means is now this token is mapped to the mock mobile service. So component 2 was using the mock mobile service already. Mobile 1 component was using the default provided modular mobile service. So although we're still injecting mobile service, that token refers to the mock mobile service at the app module level. So notice, if all your components are using mobile service token for injection at the app module level, you could switch all of them without changing any code by just changing that one line of code or 2 lines of code in the app module. So let's see what happened now. Okay. Notice now it shows iPad Pro in both component templates. So the other thing I just want to discuss with this example is, and this is really sort of a TypeScript mini lesson here about services. Okay, there's different ways to implement services. Let's take a look at this file here. We could have defined an abstract class with an abstract method, and the mock mobile service could have implemented that, and I could have defined a real mobile service which implemented that. Now, of course, in other languages, abstract classes and abstract factories are extremely powerful, but people moved away from them in favor of interfaces for a number of reasons. So let's take a look at interfaces real quick. So here I could define a mobile interface, an iMobile service, and I could implement the mock mobile service could implement the iMobile service interface, and so could the real mobile service interface. And there's more flexibility in that because I could implement multiple interfaces. Okay, so that's all I want to discuss with that particular example. Let's go to our next example, which is really an extension of this. Let's see. I'm going to cd into di factory, and I'm going to start that project. Okay, so let's look at this last example. Okay, so let's see what we have here. We have the app root tag. We've got the main app module. We're bootstrapping app module. That app module file is located here. And let's see what we have in our app module. Okay, first of all, we're bootstrapping app module here. So we don't need this. We don't need this. Okay, so this is our app module, and it uses an app component, a mobile service, and once again we have mobile 1 component and mobile 2 component. Now, what are we doing here that's different? Okay, we're importing browser module, and we're declaring app component, mobile 1 component, and mobile 2 component, and our providers are the mobile service. And we also provide a constant is dev environment, and we use the value true. So we define this at a module level. So let's go into our app component. Once again, has an app-root selector. We have a template. Template looks the same. Mobile 1, mobile 2 tags. So let's look at those components. Mobile 1 is using the mobile service. Since the app module is listing that as a provider, that token would be used to look for a mobile service class and instantiate it. Let's look at mobile 2 component. Mobile 2 component imports the mobile class device, the mock mobile service, and for this component, I'm going to say mobile 2 component template, we provide or slightly override the mobile service token. We're now telling the component injector, use a factory. If it's dev, use the mock mobile service, else use the mobile service. And this factory depends on is dev environment, which is defined at the application module level. So when this service gets injected, it's going to use this provider. And that provider is using a factory. And that factory depends on a provided constant in the app module. So when we look at this, so in the dev environment, this is going to call the mock mobile service. This one's going to call the mobile service. So let's look at our services again. Mobile service says iPhone, mobile, mock mobile service, implements mobile services, and it basically returns a device that says iPad Pro. Okay, so this is the result of the example running on port 42. The Angular component, the Angular application is rendered in gray, and we have the 2 component templates rendered in different colors. So now to change what we're doing very easily, let's see, first of all, if we're buying what has happened. Okay, so the mock mobile service was called because of the dev. So let's go to the app module, and let's change this to false and see what happens. Now we're using the production versions of the mobile service, and we're not using the mock service. So this is an example of how you could use the factory to switch between different service definitions. Okay, and that's all I really want to discuss with this particular example. And dependency injection, you're going to use it quite a bit. So embrace it. And that's all I have to say. We'll stay tuned for our next tutorial on Angular 4.